G'day legends. I hope that you're having a fantastic weekend and a fantastic Sunday, that the Sunday blues haven't got you too bad heading back to work tomorrow. Anyway, I hope you're having a great day and a great week ahead. So we have a fair bit to go over today, but I'm going to do my very best to get this shorter than the previous video. So we really have three things to go over today. Now, firstly, we're going to be talking about a leaked phone call coming out between senior military officials within Germany and military command, and the authenticity of this and exactly what was said. And I've had a native German speaker, an incredibly knowledgeable person, actually listen to the full 38 minutes for me in German and break it down for me, because anytime you change something in language, things can get misconstrued. And also, I'm not fully over exactly who is present and how maybe this has leaked and come out. I think you'll find that very, very interesting, because there's bits in this that I haven't seen speculated anywhere that I've been sent across. And then, of course, we're going to have a look at the maps. And then we're going to talk, of course, about a downed Su bomber and even the most hardcore people having questions about the authenticity of the claims of this going down. But we need to start first at this leaked phone call. Now, I've known this for now a couple of days. I know it has been doing the rounds, but I was holding off because I wanted to get a better idea of exactly what was going on and some level of confirmation. Now, today, we are getting more and more confirmation. Would I say it's 100% happened, everything? No, it's hard to get 100% on this, but it is looking more and more like this is real. The mainstream media everywhere, from the ABC in Australia to the Wall Street Journal to Reuters, CNN, everyone is really confirming this, and even saying that Germany has confirmed bugging of Ukraine talks. So look, we're getting closer and closer to that 100%, and I think that we're fairly on the money saying that it is. Now, if you want to listen to parts of it with translation in English, I'll put that on the Telegram and you can watch it wherever that is here. So we have like a 5-minute outtake here, and we're not going to listen to this full thing, but we can see this discussion going on, and this was posted through Russian Telegram channels, so on and so forth. But it's mainly talking about the Taurus systems as well as the Kerch Strait Bridge, saying that they'd need 20 missiles for it and how difficult it would actually be. But instead of that, we're going to do the breakdown of it from a more knowledgeable person, especially in this space than I, who knows who the people actually are involved, like who exactly they are, what positions they're in. So I'm just skirting around some things here of what I can and can't say, and how this has actually come out. So I will say there is some speculation in this, and it's very clear when parts are speculative and when parts are legitimate. Now, it might be a little bit backwards in this, but lastly, and this is pure speculation, I think it makes for a good story if it turns out to be true. I'm very certain that the leak came from Brigadier General Frank Graffer, not that he intentionally leaked something, but the other three guys were all sitting in an army base somewhere, and he dialed in from his hotel in Singapore. So I think it's not much of a stretch to conclude that he either got his laptop or phone tapped while in Singapore. This is even further corroborated by a story that happened during the air show in Singapore. For some seemingly random reason, the German Air Force refused entry to Chinese and Russian people at their exhibit. My guess is that either they got tipped off that the Chinese or Russians were spying on them, or that their guy was bugged while he was there, and they reacted with these additional checks of these nationals. And here we have news stories from multiple days ago. Chinese visitors allegedly barred from Airbus Germany plane. Airbus is sorry for banning Chinese attendees in the Singapore air show. So this guy was in Singapore at the air show. There was this random banning of how this happened. I've been to a number of these like military style events. Always there is a risk of external players in this as well. I've been with guys who they're going through and they're bug sweeping their rooms, everything, because of the increased threat of something like this. So this is speculative, but I think it does really start lining up how that could actually happen. These phone calls outside, like from a military base going out, typically will be made in secure rooms. Some different countries have different names for those secure rooms, but yeah, typically they're out of those, even sometimes with specific phones. Anyway, who are these people? The people who are mentioned in the call all make sense in this conversation. Mainly, we're talking about Brigadier General Frank Graffe, who we spoke about, who is Germany's military attaché to the US, and Lieutenant General Ingo Gerhardt, head of the German Air Force. So very senior. The two captains are from the Cyber and Air Force commands. Basically, one of them is responsible for Air Force mission planning, and the other guy from the Cyber Command is there because Germany moved their Strategic Reconnaissance Command into Cyber. So they are responsible for strategic intelligence gathering, for example, what assets Russia has on the ground. So all the people in this conversation make sense. These are the people you would have in this phone call to be discussing about this. There's not like one outlier. Like if just Willie was in the phone call, you'd go, why is he there? That makes sense. And again, some of this is speculative, but it sort of draws it all together. Also, all the things that aren't really related to their credentials or the tourist conversations check out. One guy uses an old name for one command, which you wouldn't do if you looked it up on Wiki. Graffe mentions he's calling in from Singapore because during the recording, he was at the Singapore Air Show 24. Many such small details appear in the call. And the biggest reason why I think it's real is just the timing, honestly. It was leaked within days of the conversation taking place and references things the German Chancellor Scholz has mentioned hours, at most 1 or 2 days after the call probably took place, in line with French, UK, Scalp, Storm Shadow missiles, Taurus rejected, and the troops on the ground, officers, commanders on the ground of those systems. So again, what we're doing here is we're building a picture of trying to build the authenticity of the people and if and when this call took place, as well as linking this back to all the stuff coming out today, really even from Scholz, from German media, from Australian media, American media, really claiming that this is authentic and that there is ongoing investigations further into this. But let's look at then the actual start of the breakdown of this. And remember, this is 40 minutes condensed. In a recently leaked call that has so far only made the rounds in a select few German media outlets, this is a few hours old. It now has gone ballistic everywhere. Discussions between two high-ranking German generals and two other officers shed light in strategic military considerations regarding Ukraine, specifically the deployment of Taurus missiles against the Kerch Bridge. The authenticity of the 38-minute recording, allegedly first shared by Russia Today's Margarita Simonyan, pronounced wrong, but is supported by details that align closely with known facts and the current geopolitical context, confirming the involvement of key military figures such as Germany's military attaché to the US, Brigadier General Frank Graffe, and the head of the German Luftwaffe, Lieutenant General Ingo Gerhardt. The conversation delves deep into the technical and operational capabilities of the Taurus missiles, estimating that a minimum of 10 to 20 missiles would be required to effectively target the Kerch Bridge. The officers outlined a detailed mission plan that includes flying at extremely low altitudes and using an indirect flight path to evade Russian anti-aircraft defenses. Now, I'm just going to pause here and show you on the map. Of course, where we're talking about is the bridge that connects mainland Russia through to then occupied Crimea through here. And of course, taking down this bridge, which we have seen successful targeting of this bridge, nothing to take it down. We've also seen bombs laid by a truck, like a more IED style on this. But if this is cut, it does affect the ability to resupply troops on then the left bank of the Dnieper River, of course, down in the south of Ukraine. We know this will be one of Ukraine's main goals when they launch, or if and when another offensive is launched. So to evade Russian anti-aircraft defenses. They discuss the logistical challenges of deploying a maximum of 100 missiles in two separate batches to Ukraine, highlighting the strategic and tactical considerations essential for such an operation. They further reveal just how heavily the British and French are involved in the current deployment of Storm Shadow and or Scalp if it's French in Ukraine, saying Americans in civilian clothes, and are also mentioned when the topic of giving Ukraine targeting information comes up. They suggest that the British take care of almost everything except flying the plane. So of course these are an air-launched missile. We're talking Scalp, Storm Shadow, that yes, it's Ukraine up in the plane, but as far as the targeting, everything beyond there, they suggest that it's the Brits or the French doing that. I don't think this is a surprise to anyone. We see very similar with things like the HIMARS system or more technical aspects of this, and we presume that there are employed contractors on the ground. I mentioned yesterday, I know people that have contracted for very similar things like this. There's big money in it, but also maybe that there are then people still within the Department of Defense working on the ground. It's come out very clearly over the past few weeks, something that was said that it was conspiracy, but now is confirmed about even CIA bases, but manned with Ukrainians, but funded through the CIA all up and down the front line since 2014 as well, building the picture of this. And I think this helps the authenticity as well. Anyway, furthermore, further discussions reveal the complexities of modifying Ukrainian aircraft to carry the Taurus missiles, a process estimated to take 4 to 6 months, with a preference for involving British expertise due to their experience in adapting MiG-29 Su-24s for similar missions. So, of course, the era of the MiG and the Sus that Ukraine have, they're Soviet aircraft. They're not meant to carry Scalp, Storm Shadow, Taurus. They weren't those systems. So there has to be an amount of modification there as well, and the Taurus would require modifications, but because the Brits have done it before, maybe involve them, it would be easier. The conversation underscores the impressive adaptability and readiness of Ukrainian forces, particularly in comparison to their German counterparts. Targeting the Kerch Bridge with the required precision is identified as a significant challenge due to the size of the target, with the officers noting the limitations of the missile's default targeting mode and stating that for final guidance and to hit the bridge's pillars, the optical mode would need to be specifically trained. They speculate on the necessity of additional calibrations and the involvement of British forces for ground support, emphasising the critical role of the missile manufacturer, MBDA, in the integration and training processes. So, of course, different systems use different sensors aboard them at different stage of flight. We've even seen this with drones, autopilot, optical targeting, things like this. You can see in many different IED systems and even anti-tank systems, they use these sensors at different stages in flight. There also seem to be limitations to what can be handed over, as part of the targeting system is classified as German eyes only. Now, basically every country who exports has this, that even Australia, we have, and I'll put the correct name for it here, but we have, 5 eyes only. We have, we can use with other countries, but then there's a lot of stuff that is only Australian eyes, and the Americans have a lot of stuff that's only American eyes. That's, the top level of classification for certain systems. So there will be parts of this that are German eyes only. How does that go for a handover? Anyway, on a broader political level, the discussion reflects caution against direct German involvement in Ukraine, saying that any German boots in the country, even for training and support, would probably be a red line, suggesting that supporting the supply of additional Storm Shadow Scalp missiles might be a more politically palatable alternative. And this lines up as well with what we saw only a day or two after, before this was released. We saw what Schulz was saying about that he's not happy with the idea of German boots on the ground, especially when then Macron said it and saying that maybe more palatable, that Storm Shadow and Scalp, they're already there, that there's additional of those rather than the deployment of the Taurus that may then require then German movements in as well of professionals on the system. So sort of lining up here, and talks about the limitations, how difficult it actually is, one, to target this, but as well the limitations of missiles. I think a lot of people watch movies and say, oh, just bridge, bang. Very different when you've got really high level air defense in the area that you have to navigate through, as well as just the size of target that you are taking down. You're not trying to punch holes in this. You're trying to take the entire bridge down, as well as classifications. You're handing over a weapon outside of your military, outside of your classification security level processes to Ukraine or to the Brits or to the French that may just be your eyes only. This is why we have seen a change in things in the Abrams, in Bradleys, in even the Bushmasters from Australia. There's a change in the fit-out configuration inside of those as the electronics, as some of the armour, some of the Abrams, just due to these limitations. That's why you have export variants and domestic variants of a number of vehicles as well, and systems Anyway, lastly here, it should be noted that the British and French were extremely displeased when Schulz revealed the degree of their involvement when he announced his decision that Germany wouldn't be sending the Taurus missile to Ukraine. During his announcement, he confirms that he is against direct German involvement and is cautious about possible strikes in Russia, saying Taurus could reach Moscow. However, the comments are quite hyperbolic on his part. And Taurus missile has further range. We're talking about 500 kilometers on that, and there is concern about the push in. Speculatively, by me, by the expert here, the leak source is possibly attributed to unintentional security breach affecting Brigadier General Frank Graffer. This is links to what he first said, possibly during his stay at Singapore at the 24 Air Show, the military exercise that was going on at the same time as the recorded phone call. The subsequent restrictive actions taken by the German Air Force against Chinese Russian nationals at their exhibit could indicate the heightened awareness of espionage activities by those nationals at the event, maybe even caused by the breach. So that's where he thinks that this has come down, and also his breakdown of exactly what was said. Remember, native German speaker, it's a lot easier when it's native to then break it down than just captions at the bottom. So I really appreciate that. Thank you, mate. You know who you are, for all your help over this. I think a lot of people think that this is a pure solo job. Yeah, the editing, the filming, research is all done by me, but I have a lot of good people who are on the lookout for stuff like, hey, Willie, this you might be interested in. So let's now have a look at the maps. And there has been not as many updates as in previous days. It has seemed that momentum Russia had through Avdiivka has sort of petered out, but we do have some geolocated footage too. So of course, here is Ukraine, the capital of Kyiv. Red areas occupied since 22 and the purple since 14. This is the bridge down here that we were talking about. Now we'll come up into the northeast of the country first. Now we don't see any change out through Tabaevka. Here we did see Ukraine regain some territory, but just down here near Terny on this front, we do see that Russia has made a small piece of ground in here, and then we'll come into Bilorivka on this map. Now, that little change in Terny isn't shown by Syriac, but Syriac's Terny map from about a week and a half ago shows a further push through there. So we'll wait till there's more information closer days, and then we'll compare these. But Bilorivka in here, let's move this across. Now, this typically is called then the Seversk front. But during the last 3 weeks, Russian army made new advances south of the Zakira filtration plant. In addition, troops launched a series of attacks towards the first street of Bilorivka, but so far, Ukrainian army have repelled the attack. So there's a lot of fighting going on here, but not much change, if any, in the front line. Maybe just a small bit that is down around in here, but this front line here, this Seversk front, I've seen a lot of Russian pages really pointing out the success of the Ukrainian defences in Seversk. This, for well over a year, has barely moved anywhere on the front line. And I know when I was in Ukraine mid to late 22 in Seversk, it was looking like this could fall at any time. Of course, it was when this green was red at one point, but there has been a lot of success in holding back the Russians in this area. Now, we're just going to push down a little bit now into Bakhmut. Now, we saw a couple of days ago that Russia has really pushed into the center of Ivanovsky and is controlling most of it, as well as the high ground that sits between Kromove, Ivanovsky. That is, of course, a strategic help. It's an asset for then launching more attacks into then Chasiv Yar here. But any big move around Bakhmut, I think we've shown over the past now over 12 months that there's not going to be any huge moves all at once. But west of Bakhmut, Russian army continue advancing in Ivanovsky, taking control over parts of Tereshkovo Street and the adjacent trenches south of it. About half the locality is now under Russian control. So if we just have a look down here, it is more difficult to see, but we can see where these paddocks are sitting. That I think this is fairly close, that the maps are, comparative in here. I think the Deep State and both the Syriac are showing a similar amount of control. If anything, I actually think the Syriac might be showing a bit less. Maybe these are hard to line up, but we do know that advances are happening in there and that they line up. That is, as you know, what we like to see. Now, we are going down then into Avdiivka in here. Now, has been no change in Avdiivka over the past couple of days. It does seem that Ukraine's counterattacks in here, the first line of defences that of course sit between Semenivka, Badachi in here, have managed to at least stall for the time being Russia's offensive in here. This is very good for the Ukrainians because over this 12, 13 kilometres that was made in a week, momentum is a huge key, and it did look like how far is this actually going to continue. So we're not sure how this will look. People do speculate about certain time frames on things, but let's just wait out and see. But we do have some geolocated footage in here that I think you will find interesting. So the first one we'll look at is then in Orlivka here. We are seeing Russia put up some flags. So skip forward a little bit. We see then a unit's flag with then a hammer and sickle on it in then Orlivka. And you can just see the level of destruction here. And this is geolocated just to where these crossroads are here just to the southeast in this building. So we look at the crossroads. So just to the southeast in this building, this is no surprise to anyone that Deep State, all the maps have shown this being under control for a while. Remembering Syriac, he will still claim that this, more through like this, is currently under Russian control. So we are unsure. Syriac, Deep State, they tend to line up a day or two out, but geolocated footage to there. Now we come to Chonenki in here, and this is a more interesting geoloc. So then we'll see. Imagine having intros for war videos. That, then this Russian soldier here climbing up with then a Russian flag. Again, you can just see the level of destruction of everything in here. You'll see a unit flag as well as the Russian national flag here as well. And these guys do seem to sort of just be, hanging out. What gives us the idea, if you're silhouetting yourself up on top of a building like this, that there isn't like immediate threat straight away, sort of like what we saw in Krinky, where it was, very high pressure area that you're like, this is right on the front. This does seem that there must be some level of buffer here if you're just hanging out in the open like this. That is just speculative from me, but I think it does line up, because if you're in this building, you could be targeted silhouetting out like this, but this then is geolocated to here. So this is, of course, Tonenki. We just see where this road lines up. Let's have a look. So it is, see where this turns on this little one. So it is just in here somewhere. So we definitely know that the front line crosses somewhere approximately through here. We are unsure, but we know that a flag was raised there, and it seems that it was a lower threat environment, but we wouldn't be surprised to see Tonenki come under control. Also, we know that it is definite fighting in there. So they are then the map up. Oh, no, sorry. Got to go down south a little bit. So no change with Pervomayski, Novelsky, no change. Madiinka, we saw then yesterday, we saw this push here out towards Horivka. Now, Syriac didn't have a map update yesterday, but it seems that Syriac was a day out because, wrong one, here we go. Today, we get then this, showing the exact same location in here. This is what we like. When two different sides of the map line up, we can confirm, yep, that 100% happened. After 2 weeks of combat, the Russian army managed to capture the trench south of Horevsky Pond, taking control over most of the Dasha located there southeast of Horevka. So, again, yep, lines up pretty much perfectly. There may be a few 100 meters or tens of meters difference in the maps, but for all intents and purposes, we know that there was a shift there on the front line. Lines up, that's what we like. But up and down the rest of the front line, there's no change that I can see on any of these maps. You'll see that one near Novomilivka, but we did talk about that change. So that is end of maps. Now we need to talk about Russia's apparently non-stealth, very stealth bombers. So there's a lot of claims that another Su-34 has been shot down, bringing the total in, just over 2 weeks to 14. Of course, different variants, but primarily of Su-34 bombers with very, very little evidence of this. Now, I'll believe whatever if I see evidence, but you are not wrong to ask for evidence when there's claims. Both ways. When Russia was claiming to have been hitting the HIMARS and there was no evidence of it, why should we believe it? And if Ukraine's claiming to be shooting down these Su-34s and there's no evidence of it, again, present evidence. There should be radar evidence. There should be photo or video evidence come out within a few days, as well as the pilots who fly planes, these aren't just conscript guys. These aren't just soldiers. Pilots who fly, they're officers. They're more senior guys. They will be, higher paid, all of this. So you get more then of your obituaries, celebrations of life, things like this from officers. You get that. So it's more commonly to come out and faster. Anyway, the commander of Ukraine's Air Force was caught today in a lie. And this really doesn't help for reputations on things like this as well. We saw the horrible thing that happened when a Ukrainian missile went to Poland, which I think if they just owned up to, everyone would have just said, yep, that happens in war. Terrible, unfortunate accident that happened. But because of the lies, reputations were harmed and people changed their mind for the rest of the war. But this came out in March 22 in the Mariupol direction. It's not always possible to please you with such videos because Air Force conducts combat work at long distances. Visually confirmed. Trust in the Air Force, not couch potatoes. Claiming another Su-34 was downed, and this video here, which, again, struggle to call this evidence that it's just a fire. Anyway, we saw then people circulating this video, this is just before the video, but it's the same video, was released on then the 28th, so 4 days ago. And that even the most hardcore NAFO propaganda accounts are starting to speculate, like, where's the evidence of this? So this guy says, no footage, no images, no obituary. Whilst I wish that these were true, I highly doubtful that they are all genuine. Of basically every other loss we've seen of an aircraft like this within a few days, even Russia's most embarrassing losses of shooting down their own planes or losing their incredibly important A-50. I'd rather lose the whole fleet of these than lose the A-50. Within a day or two, we have obituaries for the officers who are aboard. We have photos. We have radar almost instantly. And for these, we just have nothing. I'm not saying it didn't happen. I'm saying that if the evidence is there, it needs to be released because there's doubt from even the most hardcore elements on that side. And it can have a huge reputation issue when you see these false claims like this. Now, I thought this video, I was like, oh, maybe this is just, I don't know, something that Russia's pulled out for the Russian propaganda. But then even these hardcore accounts are showing this. Video shared by Air Force Commander Oleshchuk, which is claimed to be a burning crash of the Su-34 on March 1st, is footage that already emerged online on the 28th of Feb. This footage claimed as evidence is false. So calling out their own side that this has happened, which is good. You should, seek truth, call out where you see bullshit, regardless of what bias you have toward wanting it to be true. And then this guy, again, who's of course, is hardcore on that side. The Ukrainian Air Force claims it has shot down another Su-34 in the eastern direction. Giving the recent statements with false video footage from Commander Oleshchuk, I would prefer to see actual proof instead of blindly believing these claims. Good move for you, Noel. Firstly, there's a lot of claims that you've believed, mate, that I see with no evidence. But also, what about then all the other ones? There's, over 10 of these claimed with maybe evidence of 1 or 2. There's a lot in this, and I think people are starting to push back on extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. And so far, there's been given zero evidence, and the only evidence being given has been proven to be falsified. So I think Ukraine really, really, really need to protect what reputation they have in claims like this because it can turn people really, really sour. Now, I need to talk about the A-50. Of course, the AWACS aircraft, the Airborne Early Warning Systems, one of the most important aircraft, if not the most important aircraft in the airspace for air warfare. On the week on from the loss of the second A-50U, U being the more updated one, mainstay airborne AWACS, Russia has highly likely grounded the fleet from flying in support of Ukraine operations. We've seen this as well, that there has been a very limited amount of these actually in the air since those have been lost because they're very, very important. We believe they had 9 upgraded ones that they're probably now down to 7. This is likely to continue whilst internal investigations take place surrounding the failure to protect another high-value enabler and how to mitigate the threat of Ukrainian air defense continues to pose, especially if one of them was shot down by their own forces, which a fighter bomber and even the MOD has stated may have happened. The first one might have been a blue on blue, which is just unbelievably embarrassing for such an important system. I will say as well, though, we did see yesterday claims from fighter bomber, who when I talk reputation, has a very good reputation of claims, did say that another upgraded A-50 was delivered as well. Yesterday, not sure how long it actually takes to upgrade the A50s. We know Russia has older A50s. They've updated, say, half of them, and they can also change Il-76s through a deep modernization program that will take a long time to get them to the more modernized, updated version, as well as the new A100 AWACS is coming in end of the year, start of next year. Maybe we don't have a time on that, but the switch over. So yes, losing these is a massive, massive problem. It is. I'm not taking anything away from that. But to say that their AWACS capability is gone, that's incorrect also. The loss of this capability, providing daily command and control to Russian air operations, highly likely significantly degrades the situational awareness provided to air crews. Therefore, we wouldn't be surprised if we did see an increase in bombers being hit. This is a capability gap Russia can ill afford over the contested airspace of eastern and southern Ukraine. It's not, I don't know if contested is the right word, it's a very dangerous airspace, but we are seeing that Russia has had a massive increase in freedom of movement of the Su-34 particularly, and Su-25 aircraft in at least eastern Ukraine. Southern, I think there's a lot more ISR capability coming in off the Black Sea and drones. They're pumping into Ukrainian air defense, but in east, we have seen that Russia has had day on day on day record numbers of bombs being able to, that they're able to actually deliver in those. So yes, without the AWACS in the air, it's going to be far more dangerous for these, and they're going to have a limited visibility from all their sensors on board, because AWACS is basically a giant radar system basically for airborne control. But it is still seeming that there is still that massive capability they are able to deliver into the east. It is likely that Russia will have to explore options to bridge this gap, including repurposing aircraft and accepting greater risk to provide the effective air support to its ground forces that its ground forces require, but are likely not receiving. This is a prolonged issue that has almost certainly been exacerbated by the removal of A-50s supporting operations. So airframe and crew fatigue is almost certain to intensify once the A-50 does return to operations. With the fleet increasingly stretched, it is a realistic possibility Russia may attempt to bring previously mothballed A-50 airframes back into service to alleviate this. And every Russian is saying they are 100% doing this. They are bringing older A-50 airframes, trying to modernise them up to that A-50U standard to bridge the gap between when the A-100s come in. And in this as well, saying that the Il-76, which is just the bare bones same plane, to make them then into the electronic airborne early warning system too. So these are huge, huge losses, not to underestimate that, but it's more at the moment, if they're not flying there, then if they're grounded, you don't have any of this AWACS in the air. That is further issues. Fighter Bomber talked about this in our video yesterday, saying that they may have overestimated the capability of these and therefore have lost them, changed sort of your standard operating procedures because they can't afford to lose these planes. But we're still seeing a lot of air power flying, particularly over the east. Anyway, I just wanted to look at this IED. This is from a Russian account giving advice to Russian soldiers, or a warning for this, and this is in a flashlight. Throw flashlights stuffed with explosive devices tearing off their hands when lifted or turned on. Be more attentive to the loot. So have attention to what you're bloody picking up. Well, remember, don't put your hands where a dog doesn't put his nose. This also concerns civilians. Now, these indiscriminate weapon systems, it is rarely difficult between where is this an improvised explosive device, an IED, where is this a booby trap, where is it a mine. There are definitions for these. You can look at when I interviewed with a war lawyer about this, like he investigates war crimes, but indiscriminate weapons like this, one, not a good thing. Two, these are in breach of certain elements of treaties, laws as well, regardless of who dropped it, whatever. There are still laws of war, regardless of a illegal invasion or not. Indiscriminate weapons like this, some types of mines, IEDs, booby traps are still illegal. You can't just turn a blind eye to everything. Legends, that is end of video. Hope that you have a great week ahead of you. I'll speak to you soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.